She stood 6'2", with shoulders as broad as any man and arms thick with muscle. And for 23 years, every man in California told her the same thing. You are too much, too tall, too strong, too rough around the edges. No man wanted a woman who could beat them at arm wrestling, until the day a stranger rode into San Francisco and watched her throw a grown man clean through a saloon door. He did not laugh. He did not mock her. He sat on his horse with a grin on his face and said 5 words that changed everything. You looking for work, ma'am? What happens when a woman who has told her whole life she was too much finally meets a man who looks at her and says, You are just right. You are perfect for a life with me. This is a story about being seen, about finding the one person who does not want to change you, fix you, or shrink you down. The one who looks at everything you are and says, More. Give me more. You are not too much. You have just been offering yourself to people who cannot handle all of you. The right person will not ask you to be smaller. They will stand beside you and say, Finally, someone who matches me. If you have ever been told you were too much for someone, stay until the very end. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from today. It was 1872, on a July afternoon so hot the air itself felt heavy, when a stranger rode into San Francisco, California. And right then, Sarah Duncan had a feeling her life was fixin' to change. It happened the very moment she looked up and saw him watching her. She had a grown man lifted clean off the floorboards, and she was about to send him flying through the saloon doors and into the dusty street. She stood a tall 6'2" in her worn-out boots, with shoulders as broad as any man who worked the fields and arms thick with muscle from years of wrangling her family's struggling ranch just outside of town. The drunk she had just thrown out of the Golden Gate Saloon made the mistake of putting his hands where they did not belong while she was trying to order supplies for her sick father. Sarah gave him one clear warning. He chose to ignore it. Now she stood in the doorway, hands planted firmly on her hips, her chest rising and falling with pure righteous anger as the drunk stumbled away, shouting curses. The other men in the saloon gave her plenty of room, just like they always did. At 23 years old, Sarah had long ago made her peace with the fact that no man in San Francisco wanted a thing to do with a woman who could beat them at arm wrestling, who stood taller than most of them, and who had the nerve to stand her ground and not apologize for the space she took up in this world. The stranger just sat there on his paint horse, one leg hooked casual-like around the saddle horn, and he was grinning. It was not the usual smirk she got from men, the kind full of mockery. This was something else entirely, something that brought a flush to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. He swung down from his horse with a smooth, easy motion. He was a tall man himself, she noticed. Probably 6'4", if she had to venture a guess. His sandy brown hair brushed his collar under a worn-down hat, and his eyes had the warm color of whiskey in the lamplight. He was dressed in dusty trail clothes, but carried himself with a confidence that said he was not a man who was easily rattled. And yet there he stood, still smiling at her like she had just performed the most entertaining trick he had ever laid eyes on. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat as he walked closer. His voice was a low rumble that seemed to travel right through her. "That was the best bit of bouncing I've witnessed since I left Montana. You looking for work?" Sarah just blinked. In all her years of being too tall, too strong, and just playing too much for the men of California, nobody had ever asked her a question quite like that. Work doing what, she thought. He answered before she could ask. Tossing out drunks for a living, running cattle, breaking horses, mending fences. All the things that make a ranch run right. He held out his hand. "Kieran Lawson. I just bought the old Fitzgerald place about 10 miles north of here. 3,000 acres, and not one dependable hand to show for it." She took his hand without thinking, feeling the firm, calloused grip of a man who understood hard work. "Sarah Duncan. And I've already got a ranch to run, Mr. Lawson, though I thank you for the offer." "You run it by yourself?" His eyebrows went up, not with doubt, but with what looked like real interest. "My father is sick, lung fever. He has not been able to do much for months. I have been getting by on my own." But she cut herself off right there. Why on earth was she telling this stranger all her problems? That is none of your business, Mr. Lawson. Good day. She started to turn back into the saloon, but his voice stopped her cold. Miss Duncan, hold on. I'm sorry if I said something wrong. That was not my aim. I just meant that in all my years of ranching, from Montana clear down to Texas and now here, I have never seen anyone with your kind of strength and ability. Most fellas I hire cannot throw their weight around like that, and I mean that literally. It is a compliment. Sarah turned back around real slow. He looked honest, his amber eyes held steady on hers. You really mean that? I surely do. And I meant what I said about the job, too, if you ever find yourself needing one. I pay a good wage, see that my people are fed, and I sure don't put up with any foolishness from the other hands. A woman who can pull her own weight would be treated with the same respect as any man on my place. He tipped his hat back, then let that devastating grin show again. Though I reckon you could teach most of them a thing or two about earning it the hard way. Against her better judgment, Sarah felt the corners of her mouth twitch up into a smile. You are a peculiar man, Mr. Lawson. Call me Kieran, please. And I have been called a whole lot worse. He settled his hat back down on his head. I will be over at the land office tomorrow morning if you care to talk it over. If not, I sure hope that fella learned his lesson about bothering a lady who can take care of herself just fine. He swung up onto his horse with a smooth, easy motion and rode off down the dusty street. Sarah was left standing there in the saloon doorway, feeling more turned around than she had in years. She watched him go, taken in the confident set of his shoulders and the way he sat that horse like he was born to the saddle. Sarah. The bartender, old Thomas Brennan, stuck his head out. You all right there? That fella cause you any trouble? No, Tom. He did not cause me any trouble at all. She shook her head, trying to clear it. And that is the very thing that makes it so strange. She gathered the supplies she had come for, loading them into her wagon with a practiced skill. The weight of the flour sacks and barrels of grain was nothing to her, though she noticed the usual gawks from men passing by. Let them stare, she thought. She had work to do. The ride back to the Duncan Ranch took a full hour, and Sarah spent nearly the whole time thinking about Kieran Lawson and his strange job offer. 3,000 acres. That was a mighty big piece of land, especially being so close to San Francisco. The Fitzgerald place had been sitting empty for 2 years, ever since old man Fitzgerald passed on, and his children back east made it clear they wanted no part of a California ranch. She had ridden past it a time or two and seen the fences falling down and the fields overgrown with weeds. It would take a tremendous amount of work to get it up and running again. The Duncan Ranch, when you compared them, was only 800 acres, and at the moment, it looked almost as rough as the Fitzgerald place. Sarah winced as she drove past fences she knew were busted, past pastures where the cattle grazed on grass that was growing too thin because she had not had the time to manage the watering right. Her father had always been the one to handle that part of it, the planning and the overseeing, while her mother managed the house. Sarah had always been the one to provide the muscle for the heavy lifting. But her mother had been gone for 3 years now, taken by the flu. And now her father was upstairs in bed, coughing so hard each night it wore him down to nothing. And Sarah was trying her best to do it all alone. She was strong. No doubt about it. Stronger than most men she knew. But even she could not be in 2 places at once. The house was a simple 2-story place her grandfather had built 40 years ago. It was in desperate need of paint and new shutters. But it was a solid home that had always been filled with love. Now it just felt too quiet, too big and empty, with nothing to hear but her father's ragged breathing from his room upstairs. She carried the supplies inside and climbed the stairs to look in on him. Robert Duncan had once been a big, hearty man with a chest like a barrel, but his sickness had whittled him down to a mere shadow. His face looked pale and gray against the white pillows, and a rattling sound came from his chest with every breath. "Papa." She laid her hand on his forehead. He was warm, but the fever was not high. That was something to be thankful for. His eyes slowly opened. "Sarah, girl, you get the supplies? All of it. Even that medicine Dr. Chen said might help your breathing." She helped him sit up a bit and gave him a spoonful of the bitter tonic. He made a face but swallowed it down. "Too expensive. Do not you worry about that now, Sarah." His voice was weak but still firm. "We cannot keep on like this. This ranch is too much for just one person. I am managing. You are running yourself straight into the ground." He reached for her hand, his grip frail and barely there. "Your mama would not have wanted this for you. Working yourself to bone on a failing ranch. No time for anything else. No chance for you to have a life of your own. This is my life, this ranch, and taking care of you. You ought to be married by now. You should have children. You should have a partner to help you share this load." Sarah felt that old, familiar ache settle deep in her chest. "Papa, you know as well as I do. No man around here wants to marry a woman like me. I am too tall. I am too strong. I am not womanly enough. I have been hearing it my whole life." "Then they are all a bunch of fools," Robert said, squeezing her hand. "Someday, a man will come along who sees what I see. A strong, capable, beautiful woman who can do anything she puts her mind to." "Maybe in a fairy tale, Papa," Sarah said in a quiet voice. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "You get some rest now. I have to go check on the cattle before it gets dark." She spent the next 3 hours riding along the fence line, making a mental list of all the repairs that had to be made. By the time she got back to the barn, the sky was completely dark, and her whole body ached from pure exhaustion. She took care of her horse, fed the chickens, gathered the eggs, and then hauled 2 heavy buckets of water from the well for the morning. Back inside, she fixed a simple supper of beans and cornbread. She ate half and put the rest aside for her father's breakfast. She was too tired to feel hungry anyway. Upstairs, she checked on him one last time, saw that he was sleeping peacefully, and finally fell into her own narrow bed. Lying there in the dark, she thought about Kieran Lawson and his job offer. Fair wages and meals he had promised. Respect, to be treated the same as any man. It was tempting, so very tempting, to just imagine walking away from the heavy weight of the Duncan ranch, from watching her father slowly fade away, from the impossible job of trying to do everything all by herself. But she could never abandon her father. And she could never sell the ranch that had been in her family for 2 generations, and she refused to give up no matter how tough things got. She would fall into bed with tears still wet on her face, only to wake up before the sun to face it all again. 3 whole days went by in a haze of work that broke her back and her spirit. Sarah patched up fences, moved the herd to greener pastures, fixed a busted watering tank, and spent her nights hunched over the account books. She tried to make the numbers work for the bank loan that was due in just 2 months. But no matter which way she figured it, the math just was not on her side. On the 4th day, she had to ride back to town to get more medicine for her father. His cough was getting worse, and Dr. Chen said he needed a stronger tonic, a more expensive one, that might actually fix the problem instead of just quieting it down. She was standing in the general store paying for the bottle when Kieran Lawson strolled in. He looked a whole lot better than the first time she had laid eyes on him. He was clean-shaven, his hair was cut neat, and he was wearing a new pair of jeans and a crisp shirt. He spotted her right away, and a big smile spread across his face. "Miss Duncan, it is good to see you again." "Mr. Lawson." She gave him a small nod, suddenly feeling self-conscious about how she must look. She had on her father's old shirt and a pair of worn-out pants, with her hair shoved under a hat and a layer of dust on her boots. Next to him, she felt like a stray dog. "Please, call me Kieran. Are you doing all right?" His eyes were full of real concern as they searched her face. "I'm getting by. Just picking up some medicine for my father." "Is he doing worse?" "About the same." She paid the man for the medicine, flinching at how much it cost, and started to leave. Kieran walked right alongside her. "Have you had any chance to think about that job I offered?" "I have not had a spare minute to think about much of anything, Mr. Lawson." "Kieran," he said again gently, "and I get it. Trying to run a ranch all by yourself is an impossible task. I know because that is what I'm trying to do right now, and I am failing at it something awful." In spite of how tired she was, Sarah felt a little spark of interest. "Failing? I thought you had ranching experience." "Oh, I have plenty of experience running a ranch. What I do not have is 5 extra sets of hands and another 30 hours in every day." He gave a crooked grin. "I have spent the last 3 days just trying to round up all the wild cattle that have been running loose on that land for 2 years. Every time I get a few of them penned, another bunch breaks right through a weak spot in the fence. It is like trying to bail out a boat with a bucket full of holes." Sarah found herself smiling despite her mood. "You need to fix the fences first, then you can worry about rounding up the cattle, so I am learning." They reached her wagon, and he helped her load the medicine, his movements easy and sure. "Miss Duncan, can I ask you something, I suppose? Would you be willing to ride out and take a look at my ranch? Not for work," he added real quick, seeing the look on her face. "Just to give me your thoughts on what I am doing all wrong. Your family has ranched this land for generations. You know the soil, the weather. I am new to this part of the country, and I could surely use some advice from somebody who knows what they are about." Sarah hesitated for a moment. She ought to say no. She should head on home and tend to her own chores. But there was something in his face, a kind of open and honest sincerity that made her want to believe him. And Lord help her. She was lonely, so bone-deep lonely she could hardly stand to admit it even to herself. "I can spare an hour," she heard her own voice say, "but then I have got to get back. An hour is all I need." "Well, I probably need about a month of your time, but I will take what I can get." His smile was warm and full of gratitude. She followed his horse north, down a road she knew like the back of her hand, past her own property line and onto the old Fitzgerald spread. Kieran had not been pulling her leg about the state of the fences. They were a complete disaster, busted through in more places than she could count. The main house, however, was in surprisingly good shape. She could tell someone had been putting in some serious work on repairs. "I have been focused on getting the house livable," Kieran explained as they swung down from their horses. "Figured I needed a roof over my head before I started worrying about the livestock. Might have been backwards thinking. No, that makes sense." Sarah walked the edge of the nearest pasture, her eyes taking in the lay of the land, the water sources, and the spots where cattle had clearly been bedding down. Her practiced eye took a silent inventory of problems and their solutions. "Your biggest problem is you have got cattle scattered all across 3,000 acres with no way to manage them. You need to section off parts of it, make smaller pastures you can actually control. Fix the fences for one section at a time and move the herd into each one as you finish. That makes a lot of sense." Kieran pulled a small notebook from his pocket and started scribbling. "What else?" Sarah found herself talking more than she had in months. She explained water management and how to rotate grazing land, showing him where the ground dipped in ways that would turn into a muddy mess in the winter. She pointed out the patches where the grass grew thickest and would make the best pasture. He listened to every word, asking smart questions and treating her knowledge with a deep respect that made something warm unfold inside her chest. An hour went by, and then 2, and with the sun high in the sky, Sarah realized how late it had gotten. "I have to get going. My father is waiting on this medicine." "Of course, Sarah. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this. You have helped me more in 2 hours than I have been able to figure out on my own in 2 weeks. He walked her back to her buckboard. "Can I pay you for your time?" "What? No, absolutely not. I was just giving you my opinion." "You were doing a lot more than that. You were sharing knowledge that took a lifetime to learn. That is worth something." He started to reach into his pocket. "Mr. Lawson, I'm not taking money for giving a neighbor some advice. That is not how we do things around here." He looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. Then at least let me do the same for you. Your fences are looking pretty rough, too. I saw them when I rode by your property. Let me come over and help you fix them. You have got your own fences to deal with. I will get to them, but yours need fixing now, and you are trying to do it all on your own. I have got the time and a strong back. Let me help. Sarah wanted to say no. She wanted to hold on to her pride and her independence, all the walls she had built up around herself. But she was just so tired, so worn down by it all, and she could see in his eyes that he truly meant it. "All right," she said in a quiet voice. "I would be grateful for the help. I can be at your place by sunrise tomorrow morning." "That would be good. Thank you, Kieran." Saying his name felt a little strange, almost too familiar. He smiled, and it changed his whole face, making her heart do a little flip. "I will see you tomorrow, Sarah." She drove the buckboard home with the medicine and a new feeling fluttering inside her. It might have been hope, or maybe something a whole lot more risky. Kieran showed up at the Duncan Ranch the next morning, right as the sun was painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sarah was already up and moving. She had given her father his medicine and breakfast, fed all the animals, and was checking the fence line with a tool bag when she saw him riding toward her. He was in his work clothes today, old jeans and a faded shirt with the sleeves rolled up, showing off strong forearms. He had brought his own tools and was whistling a cheerful tune that seemed to make the whole morning feel a little bit brighter. "Morning," he called out. "Where do we get started?" They worked shoulder to shoulder all morning long, pulling wire tight, hammering in new posts and replacing old busted boards. Sarah had figured it would feel strange working so close with a man she hardly knew, but it felt completely natural instead. Kieran was a hard worker who never once complained. He kept pace with her easily, and he had a way of knowing what tools she needed before she even had to ask for it. Around noon, she declared it was time for a break and went inside to fix some lunch. She came back out with bread, cheese, and cold chicken, to find Kieran sitting on the porch steps, just looking out over her land with an expression she knew well. It was the look of someone who truly loved ranching, who could see all the promise in a piece of land even when it was looking a little rough around the edges. "It is a beautiful piece of property," he said as she passed him a plate. "Got good bones. Your grandfather was a smart builder." "How did you know my grandfather built this place?" "You can see it in the work, the way the house is set on the land. It is shielded from the worst of the wind, but built to catch a nice breeze in the summer. That is old-time knowledge, the kind that gets passed from father to son for generations." He took a bite of bread. "My own grandfather taught me how to read the land just like that. He had a ranch up in Montana, right in the shadow of the mountains. It was the prettiest place you ever did see." "So why did you leave?" Kieran got quiet for a second, a faraway look in his eyes. "He passed on about 5 years back, left that ranch to my uncle instead of me. My uncle, he did not want a partner, wanted to do things his own way. So I took what little inheritance I had and started heading south. I worked on ranches in Wyoming, Colorado, and Texas, saving up every dime I could until I could afford a place of my own." "Why here in California?" He looked right at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her forget to breathe for a second. "I was tired of winters so cold they could kill a man. I was tired of drifting from one place to the next. I wanted to find a place where I could set down some roots, build something that would last." He paused for a moment. "Plus, I had heard stories that the women out here in California were something special. I figured it was high time I came and found out for myself." Sarah felt a warmth spread up her neck, her cheeks. "You must have heard wrong. California women are just like women anywhere else." "I am not so sure about that." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "The one I have met is mighty special." She had no answer for that, so she just looked down at her plate and tried to calm the wild beating in her heart. They finished their meal in a comfortable quiet and got back to it. By sundown, they had mended nearly a quarter-mile of fence, which was more than Sarah could have managed in a week by herself. "Same time tomorrow?" Kieran asked as he got ready to head out. You do not have to keep doing this. You have your own place to worry about. Sarah, he said her name like it was something precious. I want to help. And truth be told, working with somebody who actually knows their way around a ranch is teaching me more than I could ever learn on my own. We are helping each other out. All right then, she said, tomorrow. He gave a tip of his hat and rode off as the sky began to darken. Sarah stood there and watched him go, feeling that funny little flutter inside her chest again. When she went inside, her father was sitting up in bed. He looked clearer and more awake than he had in days. Who was that fella I saw out the window? That is Kieran Lawson. He is the one who bought the old Fitzgerald place. He is giving me a hand with the fences, and I am giving him some pointers on ranching out here. Robert's eyebrows shot up. Is that a fact? And what do you suppose he is really getting from this arrangement, Papa? It is nothing like that. He genuinely needs to learn how things are done in California, and I need the muscle. It is a fair trade. If you say so. Her father's eyes had a little twinkle in them. He seems like a good man, strong and capable, Papa, and he is tall enough that you do not have to look down on him. That must be a pleasant change. I am not going to listen to you talk like that. But she could not help the smile that spread across her face as she went to start dinner. Kieran showed up every single day for the next 2 weeks. They settled into a smooth routine, putting in the hard work during the cool mornings, stopping for a midday meal, and then working again until the afternoon sun chased them into the shade. They talked while they worked, telling stories about ranching, about their pasts, about every little thing and nothing at all. Sarah found out that Kieran was 26 years old, had a sister back in Montana with a husband and 3 kids, and that he loved to read but never found the time. He could also play the fiddle, though he claimed he had not picked one up in years. He learned that Sarah once dreamed of being a school teacher, that she was a better shot than most men, and that she had never once been to a dance because no one had ever had the nerve to ask her. Her favorite spot in the whole world was the ridge behind the ranch, where on a clear day you could see clean out to the ocean. He also got to know her father. He would bring him books from town and sit with him on some afternoons, discussing ranching, politics, and the general state of things. It was plain to see that Robert Duncan approved of Kieran, and the feeling was clearly mutual. The fences got mended. The cattle were moved to greener pastures. The whole ranch started to look loved again. And somewhere in the middle of all that sweat and hard work, Sarah came to realize she was falling in love. The thought of it scared her to death. For so many years, she had been too much for any man to handle. She had built up walls to protect herself from being turned away. She had made peace with the idea that she would likely spend her entire life on her own. But Kieran, he looked at her like she was made just right. He saw her strength as a thing of beauty, not something to be scared of. He acted like there was nobody on earth he would rather spend his day with. She saw it in the way his mouth would turn up in a smile when she lifted a heavy post without his help. She saw it in the way he asked for her thoughts on everything, and then truly listened to what she said. She saw it in the wildflowers he had started picking for her on his rides over, simple little gifts he would hand her with a bashful grin. She saw it in how he began staying for supper most nights, helping her cook and then clean up afterward. He always made sure her father was comfortable for the night before he finally rode home in the dark. She saw it in the way he would look at her from across the dinner table, his eyes full of warmth and a powerful light. She felt it in the way her heart would jump every morning when she spotted him riding down the road. She felt it in how the work felt lighter with him there by her side. She felt it in how the house seemed so big and quiet after he left. 3 weeks after they started, they hammered in the last fence post. Sarah stepped back, looking over all their hard work with a deep sense of pride. The Duncan Ranch had not looked this good in more than a year. "We make a good team," Kieran said, his voice soft. "Yes, we do." She turned to face him and found him standing much closer than she had realized. He was close enough that she barely had to tip her head back to look him in the eye, close enough to see the little flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Sarah, I have something I need to say." Her heart started pounding against her ribs. "What is it?" I did not just buy the Fitzgerald place for the land. I mean, the land was part of it, but there was another reason. He took a deep breath. I was tired of being on my own, you see. Tired of working another man's property, sleeping in another man's bunkhouse, and having nothing and nobody to call my own. I wanted a place where I could put down roots and build a real life, with a family. That is a fine reason. The thing is, my plan was to get the ranch up and running first, and then maybe I would start looking for a wife. Someone who would make a good partner, who knew the ranching life, who could handle this kind of life. I had the whole thing planned right out in my head. He took her hand, his calloused fingers gently closing around hers. And then I rode into San Francisco and saw you toss a fella twice your size out into the street. And every single one of those plans went clean out the window. Sarah felt like she could not get a breath, could not think. All she could do was stare at him as he went on. I have never met anyone like you, Sarah. You are strong, you are capable, smart, and beautiful. You work harder than any 3 men I have ever known. You look after your father with such gentleness. And then you turn right around and wrestle a fence post into the ground without even breaking a sweat. You are everything I never even knew I was looking for. Kieran, his name was, barely a whisper. I know this is mighty fast. I know we have only known each other a few short weeks, but Sarah, I am falling in love with you. Truth be told, I think I am already there. And I just needed you to know that before I lose all my nerve. His grip on her hand tightened. You are not too tall for me. You are not too strong. You are perfect. You are perfect for a life on the ranch with me, if you will have me. Tears started to burn in her eyes. You really mean that? Every last word. I have never been more serious about anything in my entire life. Sarah had spent years building walls around her heart, telling herself she did not need a soul, that she was just fine on her own. But somehow, Kieran had slipped right past every one of her defenses without even trying, just by being himself. Model. Just by seeing her for who she truly was and loving her for it. I am falling in love with you too, she said, her voice trembling. I did not think it was possible. I did not think any man would ever want someone like me, but you make me feel like I'm exactly the person I was meant to be. You are. He lifted his other hand to her face, his thumb gently wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. You are exactly who you were meant to be. And then he kissed her. It was a soft, gentle, and perfect kiss. Sarah had never been kissed in her life, but this felt just right. It felt like coming home. She put her arms around his neck and he pulled her in close. And for the very first time, she did not feel too tall or too strong or too much. She just felt like Sarah, loved and wanted just the way she was. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing a little heavily, Kieran rested his forehead on hers. I have a proposition for you. Well, a few of them, actually. I am listening. First off, I want to court you the proper way. I want to take you to town for dances and bring you flowers and do all the things a man is supposed to do when he is serious about a woman. Second, I want to help you save this ranch. Your father is doing better with that new medicine, but he's never going to work the way he used to. Let me be your partner, and we will keep the Duncan place thriving. And third, well, the third one is more of a long-term idea. But Sarah, I want you to be my wife. I want to join our ranches and build one big operation. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, and grow old with you, watching the sun go down from that ridge you love so much. I want all of it. Sarah felt like her heart was about to burst right out of her chest. Yes. Yes to the courting? Or yes to all of it? Yes to all of it, every single part. But Kieran, you need to be sure you know what you're getting into. I will never be some dainty little lady. I will always be tall and strong and probably have an opinion that is too strong for polite company. I am going to want to work this ranch right beside you, not be stuck in the house doing woman's work. Good. I do not want a dainty lady. I want you just as you are. He kissed her again, but harder this time, with a fire that made her feel weak in the knees. I want a partner, Sarah, in everything. We will run these ranches together. We will make the decisions together, and we will build something to last together. My father, she said, pulling away just a little. I cannot just leave him. I would never ask you to. We will look after him together. There is more than enough room at my house, or we can move into yours if it is better for him. Whatever he needs. How can you be real? Sarah asked, touching his cheek in wonder. How does a man like you even exist? I have been asking myself that very same question about you. He took her hand and pressed a kiss into her palm. Come to the dance with me on Saturday night. Let me court you in front of the whole town. Let every last person see that you are my girl, and I am your man. The very idea of walking into a dance on Kieran's arm, of being seen by everyone as a couple, sent a wave of nerves and excitement through her stomach. I do not have a single thing that was right to wear, and I swear I don't know the first thing about dancing. He just smiled and said, Honey, you can wear whatever you want. You would look like a queen in a potato sack. And I will be the one to teach you how to dance. It is not hard at all when you have got the right partner. So that Saturday evening, Sarah found herself standing before her mama's old wardrobe, just looking at the handful of dresses she had. Most were just plain old work dresses, worn thin and patched up. But way in the back, she discovered the blue dress her mother had stitched for her 5 years ago for a social down in town. Sarah had put it on just that one time, feeling as big and clumsy as a draft horse, while all the other girls seemed so delicate and pretty in their light-colored gowns. That dress had been tucked away in the wardrobe ever since. She took it out now, holding it up to the light. It was a simple thing, but sewn with care. A blue so deep, her mama used to say it was the color of her eyes. The neckline was respectable, but the cut of it would surely show off what little figure she had. Her hands trembled as she slipped it on. The woman looking back at her from the mirror gave her a start. She looked different, somehow. She was still tall, and her shoulders were still broad. But a certain softness had settled on her face that was not there before, a little glimmer in her eyes. She looked like a woman who was in love, and she reckoned that was because she was. Her father's eyes filled with tears when he saw her. You look just like your mother on our wedding day. Sarah, darling, you are just so beautiful. I'm scared, Papa. What if I go and make a fool of myself? You will do no such thing. And even if you take a little tumble, you will be falling with a man who looks at you like you personally hung the moon and stars in the sky. That Kieran is a good man, Sarah. He puts me in mind of myself when I was a young fella before your mama got a hold of me and smoothed out all my rough edges. Robert took her hand in his. You have my blessing, the both of you do. I like that boy a whole lot. I like him too, Papa. A whole lot more than just like. I know you do. I can see it plain as day. And I am so very happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve all of this. You deserve a love this big. Kieran showed up right after the sun went down, driving a wagon he had borrowed from a neighbor and scrubbed until it gleamed. He had on his Sunday finest, and it nearly took Sarah's breath away when she laid eyes on him. He looked so handsome and a little nervous and absolutely perfect. His own eyes grew wide as saucers when he saw her. Sarah, you are a vision. You do not have to go saying things like that. I am not just saying it because I ought to. You look truly incredible. He helped her onto the wagon seat, his touch so gentle you would think she was made of glass. Every man there is going to be green with envy that I am the fella who brought you. The dance was being held in the biggest barn in the whole county, all swept out and gussied up with lanterns and bunches of wildflowers. You could hear the music spilling out into the cool night air, the happy sounds of fiddles and guitars and people singing along. Sarah felt her stomach tie itself into a knot as they got closer. We can head on home any time you want, Kieran whispered, like he could read her mind. You just have to give the word. But when they stepped inside together, with his hand resting gently on the small of her back, something inside her changed. Folks turned to look just like they always had. But for the first time, Sarah did not feel like some sideshow curiosity. She felt like a woman walking into a dance with a fine-looking man who was mighty proud to be standing beside her. Kieran guided her straight out to the dance floor just as a waltz was starting up. "Just follow me," he said. "I promise I will not let you fall." She felt clumsy as a newborn calf at first, too worried about her size and thinking she was about to step all over his feet. But Kieran was the most patient man, leading her through all the steps with a quiet sureness. And he had been right all along. With a good partner, dancing felt as easy and natural as breathing. By the time the third song was playing, Sarah was laughing, her cheeks flushed with happiness, just spinning across that barn floor in Kieran's strong arms. She could see the surprise on people's faces, could see the womenfolk whispering behind their hands, and even noticed a few of the men looking her way with a new kind of interest. She did not care one bit about any of it. The only thing she cared about was Kieran, and the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the entire world. They stayed on that dance floor for nearly every single song. During one of the breaks, a few of the town ladies came over, their eyes full of curiosity. "Mr. Lawson," said a pretty blonde girl named Margaret, "we heard you went and bought the old Fitzgerald place. How are you liking California?" "It is a beautiful land," Kieran said, but his gaze was fixed right on Sarah. "Everything I was hoping for, and then some. And Sarah, we have not seen you in town for the longest time. You look just lovely this evening." Sarah could hear the fake honey dripping from Margaret's voice. Margaret was one of the girls who used to whisper about her back in school, who made fun of how tall and strong she was. But tonight, Sarah could not find it in her heart to be angry about it. "Thank you, Margaret. You look mighty pretty yourself." As the night wore on, more and more people came up to talk to them. Sarah found herself being drawn into conversations, becoming part of the town's social life in a way that she had never been before. Just having Kieran there at her side made all the difference. The clear affection and respect he had for her made other people see her in a new light. Or maybe, she thought, as she watched him share a laugh with her old neighbor, maybe it was that she was finally seeing herself in a new light. Perhaps she had been hiding her own flame for so long that she had forgotten it was even there to begin with. They left sometime around midnight, both of them tired, but filled with a deep happiness. Kieran drove the wagon slowly, taking the long road home, and they talked about the whole evening, about the folks they had met, and about everything and nothing at all. "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice soft. "Tonight was just wonderful. It was completely perfect." Kieran brought the wagon to a halt on the ridge just behind her ranch, the very spot she had once told him was her favorite place in the world. The moon was big and bright, casting a silver glow on everything. "Sarah, I know I said I wanted to court you the proper way, and I meant every word of it, but I also need you to understand that my feelings for you are not going to change. I already know exactly what I want." "What is it that you want?" "I want you forever. But I will wait as long as you need me to. I will court you for a whole year if that is what it takes. I just need to be sure you know that I am serious about all this, about us." Sarah turned on the seat to face him, taking both of his hands in hers. "I do not need a year, Kieran. I do not even need a month. I know what I want too. I want to be your wife. I want to build a life right here with you. I want to wake up beside you every single morning and fall asleep held in your arms every night. I want everything that you want, Sarah." He gathered her into his arms, kissing her with a powerful need that she felt deep in her own soul. "I will make you happy. I swear on my life I will. I am going to spend every day I have making certain you know just how much you are loved." "I already know," she whispered. "You make me happier than I ever dreamed I could be." They stayed on that ridge for hours, wrapped up in each other's arms, making plans for their future. They agreed to get married as soon as they could, to join their two ranches into one and start building their life together. They talked about having children, about the kind of mother and father they wanted to become, about raising sons and daughters who would grow up to be strong and capable and full of kindness. "How many do you want?" Sarah asked, nestled against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "I do not know. Maybe 3, 4, however many you are willing to give me." He gently kissed the top of her head. "Although I have to admit, the thought of having daughters who look just like you and have your strength scares me just a little bit." "We will have to chase the boys away with a stick when they get older," Sarah laughed. "And what about sons who look like you and have all your charm? We will have girls knocking on our door every day of the week. Well then, I reckon we will have our hands full either way." He tilted her face up to kiss her one more time. "I cannot wait to start." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony right there at the Duncan Ranch. Robert Duncan walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle in the front yard with tears of joy streaming down his cheeks, and he placed her hand in Kieran's with a blessing and a gentle warning to take good care of his girl. "I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of her," Kieran promised him. Sarah wore her own mother's wedding dress, which had been altered to fit her taller build. Kieran wore a brand-new suit he had bought on a trip to San Francisco. The ceremony was short and sweet, with neighbors and a few friends from town there to see it. When the preacher finally pronounced them man and wife, and Kieran kissed her, Sarah felt like her heart was going to burst right out of her chest from pure happiness. They decided to make their home in Kieran's house, which was bigger and in better repair. It pained her some to leave the Duncan Ranch, the only home she had ever known, but Robert was firm about it. "This old house can sit empty for a little while, or we can lease out the grazing land to your neighbors. Right now, what you two need is to start your marriage in your own home, not with you living in your old childhood bedroom." They moved him into the largest guest room in Kieran's house, where he had a fine view of the newly combined ranch lands. The new medicine from the doctor, along with the relief of not having to worry about the ranch, seemed to be doing him a world of good. He was coughing less, had more get up and go, and could sometimes even sit out on the porch to enjoy the sunshine without it wearing him out completely. Sarah dove headfirst into learning the workings of the Fitzgerald Ranch, which they decided to start calling the Lawson place from then on. It was a bigger operation than the Duncan spread, with more head of cattle and more complicated water rights. Working from sunup to sundown right alongside Kieran, she helped him divide the pastures, fix the last of the broken fences, and round up the rest of the wild cattle. It was back-breaking work most days, but it was filled with a kind of joy Sarah had never known before. She was not doing it all by herself anymore. She had a partner, a real partner, who thought her opinions were just as important as his and valued her strength. They made all their decisions together, they worked together, they celebrated their victories, and they learned from their mistakes as a team. At night they would fall into bed, bone-tired, but they always made time for gentle words and soft touches, for the growing closeness of their marriage. Kieran treated her like she was the most precious thing in the world, like every single inch of her tall, strong body was something to be cherished. Cherished. He made her feel beautiful in a way she hadn't known was possible. 3 months after they were married, Sarah found out she was carrying a child. She had suspected it for a couple of weeks, but kept it to herself until she was certain. When Dr. Chen gave her the news, she rode back to the ranch with her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of pure excitement and deep-down fear. She found Kieran in the barn, cleaning out the stalls. He looked up as she walked in, and the easy smile on his face vanished when he saw her expression. "What is it? Is your father all right?" "Papa is just fine. Kieran, I need to tell you something." He set the pitchfork aside and walked right over to her, taking both of her hands in his. "What is it?" "I am pregnant. I am having a baby. We are having a baby." For a long second, he simply looked at her, his eyes wide. Then his face broke into the widest grin she had ever laid eyes on. He swept her up off her feet and spun her around and around, letting out a laugh that was nothing but pure joy. "Sarah, are you telling me the truth? We are going to have a baby." "Kieran, you put me down. I'm getting too heavy. You are perfect. You are absolutely perfect." But he set her down on her feet gently, then immediately knelt before her and pressed his forehead to her stomach, which was still flat. "Hello in there, little one. This is your papa speaking. I am going to love you so much, the both of you. I promise I am going to take the best care of you." Sarah ran her fingers through his thick hair as tears rolled down her cheeks. "You are happy." Happy is not a big enough word for this. He stood up and wrapped her in his arms. "Sarah, you have given me everything I have ever dreamed of. A place to call home, a purpose, a love I never thought I would be lucky enough to find, and now a child. I am the most fortunate man on this earth." "I am so scared," she confessed in a small voice. "What if I am not a good mother? What if I am too rough around the edges? You are going to be a wonderful mother. You are strong and full of love and fiercely protective. Our child will be lucky to have you." He gave her a soft kiss. "And no matter what comes, we will handle it together. That is what partners are for." They shared the news with Robert that night. He cried, just as Sarah knew he would, and told them it was the best news he had heard in years. "I am going to see my grandchild. I was not sure I would be around long enough, but now I will be." "Of course you will, Papa. You are getting stronger with each passing day, because I have a reason to live again. You two have given me that." He reached out for Kieran's hand. "Son, I thank you. Thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves to be loved, for giving her the life she should have had from the start. Thank you for raising such a fine woman, sir. I will spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of her." The pregnancy turned out to be easier than Sarah had worried it might be. She felt healthy most of the time, just a bit more tired and always hungry. Kieran was always hovering nearby, wanting her to rest more and not to push herself so hard. But Sarah was not quite ready to hand over her duties on the ranch. Not just yet. She worked right beside him well into her 7th month, only stopping when her belly became too big to climb over fences or swing a hammer without risk. Those final 2 months were hard in a different way. Sarah felt clumsy and enormous, and all her old worries about her size came rushing back. But Kieran adored her changing body, telling her every single day how beautiful she was, how incredible it was that she was growing their child inside her. Their son was born on a chilly February morning in 1873, after a long night of labor that left Sarah completely worn out and Kieran pale with worry. But the moment Dr. Chen laid the crying baby in her arms, all the pain seemed to melt away. He was flawless, tiny, and red-faced and utterly perfect. "He has your eyes," Kieran said, his voice thick with emotion as he knelt down by the bed. "Just look at him, Sarah. We created him. He is so beautiful." She could not take her eyes off the baby, off this little miracle that they had made together. "Hello, little fella. I am your mama." They named him Robert after her father, and gave him the middle name Thomas after Kieran's grandfather. Robert Duncan held his grandson and namesake, weeping without shame, saying it was the highest honor he had ever received. Baby Robert was a good baby, healthy and strong from the start. He grew fast, and Sarah could see pieces of both herself and Kieran in his little face. He had her height, already larger than most babies his age, and he had Kieran's calm and easygoing spirit. Running the ranch while caring for him was exhausting work, but Sarah had never known such happiness. Kieran was a doting father, changing diapers and pacing the floor with the baby late at night so Sarah could get some rest. He would sing to Robert in a voice that was surprisingly gentle, singing lullabies he recalled from his own boyhood. With his own 2 hands, he built a cradle, carving it with tiny horses and cattle, and the mountains he had left behind so long ago. "I want him to know where we came from," he explained, running a hand across the smooth carved wood. "And I want him to know that we built this life ourselves, that it is something to be proud of." When Robert was just 3 months old, Sarah discovered she was pregnant again. She had not expected it to happen so quickly, but Kieran was overjoyed. The more the merrier. "I would love a house full of children if you are up for it." Their daughter was born the next November. It was an easy birth compared to Robert's. She was smaller than her brother had been, with dark hair and her father's amber eyes. They decided to name her Rose after Sarah's mother. Rose was a different sort of baby than Robert. She was fussy where he had been calm and demanding where he had been satisfied. But she was also fiery and determined, and Sarah recognized a part of herself in that spirit. "She's going to be a handful," she remarked to Kieran, as they watched their baby girl refuse to be put down. "Well, good. The world can always use more fierce women like her mother." The years began to blend together in a happy blur of raising children and running the ranch. Sarah and Kieran managed their combined properties with more and more success. They hired a couple of ranch hands to help with the harder labor, good men who respected Sarah's position and were not afraid of hard work. The cattle herds grew and the land flourished, and they managed to pay off the bank loan on the Duncan ranch long before it was due. Robert Duncan lived long enough to see his grandson turn 5 and his granddaughter turn 3. He passed on peacefully in his sleep one warm spring evening. Sarah grieved for him deeply, but found comfort in knowing that his last years were filled with family and love. When Robert was 7 and Rose was 5, Sarah gave birth to twin boys, Joseph and James. They were identical, with Kieran's sandy-colored hair and Sarah's blue eyes, and they were pure trouble from the moment they learned to crawl. They got into everything, climbed on everything, broke everything, and kept Sarah and Kieran running from sunup to sundown, just trying to keep them safe. "This is what we get for wanting a day." "Full house," Sarah said, watching the twins empty an entire sack of flour onto the kitchen floor while trying to bake cookies. She was too exhausted to even feel angry. "It is worth it," Kieran said, kissing the side of her head. "Every single tiring, chaotic moment is worth it." Their youngest child, a daughter they named Catherine, was born when the twins were 3 years old. She was a complete surprise, not planned but welcomed with open arms. Catherine was sweet and gentle where her siblings were loud and wild, happy to just sit and observe the world around her with her thoughtful eyes. "She is going to be the peacemaker," Robert, who was now 10, said with great seriousness as he held his new baby sister. "She will be the one to keep the rest of us in line." And he was right. As the children got older, Catherine became the center of the family, the one who settled arguments between the twins, who comforted Rose when her temper flared, and who gently reminded Robert not to take everything so seriously. Sarah watched her children grow up with a heart full of pride and amazement. Robert had her strength and Kieran's steady hand. He loved the ranch with all his heart and spent every spare minute with his father, learning to read the land and manage the herds. Rose grew tall like Sarah, strong-willed and fiercely independent, set on doing anything her older brother could do, but better. The twins were two halves of a whole, always finding mischief but loyal to the bone to each other and their family. Catherine was the gentle surprise, artistic where the others were practical. "We did a good job," Kieran said one evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching their 5 children playing out in the yard. Robert was showing Rose how to rope a fence post, while the twins tumbled in the grass nearby, and Catherine was sketching pictures in the dirt with a small stick. "We sure did," Sarah agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder. They were both in their 30s now, showing the signs of years of hard work and happy living. Sarah's hands were rough and calloused, her face browned by the sun. Kieran had touches of silver showing at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of looking out at the horizon. But when he looked at her, Sarah felt the very same flutter in her heart that she had felt the first time he smiled at her on that street in San Francisco. "Do you ever regret any of it?" he asked her softly. "Marrying me? Giving up the way you lived before?" "Never. Not for one single moment." She turned on the bench to look him in the eye. "Kieran, before I met you, I believed I had to be strong all by myself. I thought that needing another person was a sign of weakness. But you showed me that true strength comes from letting someone stand right beside you, not behind you. You offered me a partnership, not possession. You gave me absolutely everything. You gave me more, he said, pulling her into a hug. You gave me a home when I was just a drifter. You gave me a reason to be. You gave me 5 amazing children and a life that I could never have imagined, not even in my wildest dreams. Sarah, I love you even more today than I did on the day we were married, and I did not think that was even possible. I love you too, forever and always. They kissed as the sun dipped below the mountains, their children's laughter filling the air, with the ranch they had built together stretching out all around them, just like a promise kept. The seasons rolled on, the way they do when a life is full and good. That ranch didn't just succeed. It flourished, growing bigger and stronger than they had ever dared to dream. The very ground they'd fought tooth and nail to keep, the fences they'd strung together side by side, the herd they'd so carefully raised, it all paid them back tenfold. Before long, the Lawson Ranch was a name known clear across California, a place folks pointed to as a standard of excellence. Robert grew up tall and straight, eventually looking down on his own father. He had his mother's solid build and quiet strength, Sarah's knack for understanding the land, and Kieran's sharp mind for numbers. By 18, he was running most of the day-to-day work, which gave his folks a chance to breathe. Rose was 16 and catching the eye of every young man around, though she paid it no mind. She was far more interested in the bloodlines of her horses than the cowboys who kept finding reasons to stop by. She had her mother's height and powerful frame, and she carried herself with a confidence Sarah hadn't found until much later in life. The twins, at 13, were still 2 halves of a whole, always cooking up some new brand of trouble, but they were good hands and fiercely loyal to their kin. Joseph planned to be a veterinarian, his head always buried in books about healing animals. James had the urge to roam, to see what lay beyond the California hills, though Sarah figured he'd find his way back home eventually, and Catherine, just 10 years old, was already an artist to her core. She captured everything she saw in her sketchbooks, the ranch, the livestock, the faces of her family. Kieran nurtured that spark in her, bringing her proper art supplies from San Francisco and telling her that working the land wasn't the only path to a worthy life. One afternoon, in the heat of the 1888 summer, Sarah and Kieran rode out to the same ridge where he'd asked her to be his wife all those years ago. It had become their sanctuary, the place they went to find each other again when the demands of being parents and ranchers pulled them apart. They settled in a comfortable quiet, watching the sun bleed gold and rose across the evening sky. Sarah was 43 then, with silver threaded through her dark hair and a body shaped by hard work and 5 children. But she had never felt more lovely than when Kieran looked at her, the way he was looking at her right then. "What's on your mind?" she asked him. "Just thinking I'm the luckiest man God ever put on this earth." He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "And that the smartest thing I ever did was ride into San Francisco that day and see you toss that drunk out into the street." Sarah let out a laugh. "That wasn't your smartest decision. Your best move was deciding I was worth the trouble, especially when every other man in that town had already counted me out." "They were fools, Sarah, every last one of them." He brought her hand to his lips for a soft kiss. "You know what I see when I look at you." "What?" "I see the strongest soul I've ever known. And not just with your hands, though heaven knows, you could still put most men on their backs in a straight fight. I mean strong in all the ways that count. Strong enough to keep standing when it felt like the world was against you. Strong enough to finally let me carry some of the weight, after you'd spent a lifetime carrying it all alone. Strong enough to build this whole life right alongside me. To raise 5 wonderful children and make something that will last. All from dust and sweat and love." "Kieran," she breathed, her eyes starting to well up. "I see the woman I fell for 16 years ago, and I swear I fall for her a little more each and every day. You're not too tall or too strong or too much of anything. You are exactly what you were meant to be, and you always have been." Sarah leaned in and kissed him, tasting the salt of tears she hadn't known were falling. How is it you always know the very thing I need to hear? Because for 16 years, my greatest study has been you. Learning what brings a smile to your face, what makes you laugh from the belly, what makes you feel cherished. It's the best learning I've ever had. They made love right there on that ridge as the sun dipped below the horizon, a slow and gentle coming together that was just about perfect. Afterward, they lay tangled in each other's arms, pointing out the stars as they popped into view. "We ought to be getting back," Sarah said after a while. "The kids will be wondering about us." "The kids are just fine," he murmured. "Robert's in charge, and that boy is more responsible than I was at 30. Let him wonder. I just want a little more of this. Just you and me, with nothing else in the world." So they stayed, talking about everything and nothing, dreaming about what was to come, and remembering how far they'd been. They talked about Robert and how the neighbor's girl was sweet on him. They discussed sending Rose down to a special program in San Diego to learn more about raising horses. They agreed to support James if he truly wanted to travel beyond California's borders, and they made a plan to find a real art teacher for Catherine. "We're getting old, Kieran," Sarah said with a soft smile. "No, we're getting older. There's a world of difference." Kieran pulled her in tighter. "And I aim to get a whole lot older, right here with you. 50 more years at least. I want to see our grandkids running around this place. I want to sit on that porch with you when we're old and gray and watch our family keep this ranch alive." That sounds perfect. They finally made their way home beneath a blanket of stars, their horses walking close, their hands joined between them. The house was blazing with light and welcome, the sound of laughter spilling out into the quiet night. Their children were safe, their future was secure, and their love was as strong as the land itself. As they swung down from their saddles, Robert met them on the porch. "There you are. We were about to send out a search party." "Your father was feeling poetic," Sarah told him, passing him the reins. "That's gross," one of the twins yelled from inside, which made them all laugh. Much later, after the house had gone quiet, Sarah and Kieran sat on their own porch, watching the moon climb over the hills they had made their own. Kieran's arm was a familiar weight on her shoulders, and she rested her head against his chest. And Sarah let herself think about the journey from that weary, lonely woman who threw men out of saloons for a living. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "For what?" "For seeing me. For truly seeing me, and loving what you saw. For this life." "Sarah." Kieran gently turned her face toward his. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for betting on a rambling cowboy who had nothing but big dreams in his pocket. Thank you for being my partner, shoulder to shoulder in all of it. Thank you for just being you. I love you, Kieran Lawson. I love you too, Sarah Lawson. Did from the first, will till the last." They remained there deep into the night. Two souls who had found one another against all probability, who had raised something beautiful from the dirt, who had shown that love and true partnership, and seeing the honest worth in a person can conquer just about anything. The ranch stretched out before them, bathed in moonlight. Thousands of acres they had poured their lives into, land they would one day pass to their children. The house behind them was a home, filled with the family they had made. 5 children who would carry forward their belief in hard work, love, and decency. For the first 23 years of her life, Sarah had been told she was too much, too tall, too powerful, too rough around the edges for any man to want. But Kieran had looked at her and seen not too much, but just right. Perfect, he had called her, for a ranch life with him. And he'd been right. She was perfect for this life with him, and he was perfect for her. They were perfect together. 2 steadfast people who had forged a life and a love that would outlast them both. As the moon sailed higher and the night settled deep and quiet, Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the rightness of it all. the solid, sure weight of Kieran's arm around her, the faint sounds of their children sleeping, drifting down from the windows above, the rich, earthy smell of the land, their land. The simple truth that tomorrow would bring more chores, more trials, more moments of pure joy and plain frustration. But they would meet it all as one, the same way they had met every day for 16 years. They were partners in all things. That was just how it was meant to be. And that, Sarah thought, as sleep finally found her there on the porch in her husband's embrace, was everything she never knew she could ask for, and more than she had ever dared to hope for. She had found her place, her love, her reason. She had found the one person who looked at her not as a project to be fixed, but as a treasure to be held exactly as she was. She had found Kieran, and he had found her, and out of that finding they had built a legacy that would stand long after their time had passed. A legacy of love, of honest work, of true partnership. A family that would carry their values forward. A ranch that would serve as proof of what two people can build when they stand together in love and respect. Perfect. That's what Kieran had said all those years ago. Perfect for a ranch life with me. He was right then. He was right now. And he would be right for all the years still to come. Perfect.